China issues a massive warning to the USA and the entire world, and this is now causing uncertainty in the market. The stock markets are selling off, but Bitcoin is holding up very, very well here. Bitcoin is pumping upwards, has slightly sold off again, but is still holding up very, very well. Steadfastly, gold is rising to new record highs. We are really seeing here now Bitcoin in risk-off mode. So Bitcoin is really showing the first tendencies of a risk-off asset, a safe haven. And that is, of course, very, very intense. Additionally, we now see Donald Trump once again calling for interest rate cuts. So Donald Trump is really stirring things up here. At the same time, the 10-year government bond yields are rising again. Donald Trump even calls Jerome Powell a loser here. I mean, just think about how crazy that is. And we're going to look at all of this now. We'll start right away with new purchases from MicroStrategy, who have made a move here. They bought nearly 6,500 Bitcoin. Sender Scientific, or rather Metaplanet, not Sender Scientific, also made a move with 330 Bitcoin. I even think they've been buying Bitcoin in parallel over the past few weeks. I believe it was last week or the week before last. When they bought it, it was the same, I think. That MicroStrategy and Metaplanet always buy Bitcoin together. So it looks like they are very, very well connected here. They also meet up from time to time. Michael Saylor and the Metaplanet CEO are together at events. Bitcoin is really performing very, very well in this critical situation here. And here is a very, very interesting assessment from Macroscope. He simply says, hey folks, this positive divergence of Bitcoin should be noticeable to every asset manager, potentially, historically, given what's happening right now. Let's see how it develops. Gold has loudly promoted investing in Bitcoin as soon as Bitcoin starts to deviate from risk. We continue to observe that a recovery of 100,000 US dollars opens the door to a new phase, enormous outperformance of Bitcoin compared to gold and other assets. That's what I've already told you. The rising gold price, that's not a bad thing, but something very, very positive. Because if gold is leading the way here and gold goes wild, then Bitcoin will follow and Bitcoin will go even wilder. And that's exactly what Macroscope is addressing here and what could potentially be coming our way now. The money supply leads the way, then gold follows, and then Bitcoin follows, and then Bitcoin is the massive outperformer. On the other hand, we see that China is now issuing massive warnings. It says here that China has issued a warning that it will take retaliatory measures against countries that cooperate with the USA in a way that could harm China's interests. Here is the exact quote. China decisively rejects any party reaching an agreement at the expense of Chinese interests. Should this happen, China will not accept it and will take resolute countermeasures, stated the Chinese Ministry of Commerce. And that's what the markets are not liking at all right now. The markets, they naturally want security. The markets want deals. There are no deals. There is no security. And that's why people are fleeing from risk into safe havens. And as it currently looks, it's just here. Bitcoin is the safe haven here. Gold is the safe haven, even more so gold. Bitcoin has just come up in the last 2 days. And so, it was quite good here, how it performed. Of course, one shouldn't overinterpret it. We have often said, okay, the coupling, and then it got coupled again. So you have to be a bit careful. But in any case, we see here that the place is on fire here in the USA. Here, the 10-year government bond yields are rising further. And that's why, of course, Donald Trump is in a big panic here. I mean, there are a few more shock news items, like here from Japan, where the Prime Minister said to Shiba here. According to Bloomberg, he said that Japan will not simply continue to give in during the US tariff talks. If Japan gives up everything, we will not be able to secure our national interests, said Ishiba. The market now realizes that an agreement with Japan is at best a long way off. And the market recognizes this with China. The market recognizes this with Japan. They also want to assert their own interests. They don't just want to dance to Donald Trump's tune. They have their own interests too. The market is realizing this right now. And that is, of course, very, very difficult. Here, it brings uncertainty to the market, but Bitcoin doesn't care. Bitcoin continues to rise. And it's performing here like a non-risk asset. And the craziest thing happening now, which I found really mind-blowing. President Trump is calling for preventive interest rate cuts and claims there is practically no inflation. Trump refers to the Fed chairman as Mr. Powell just as Mr. Too late. He has said that before. But now he also calls him a loser. I translated the entire tweet into German here. Here, Donald Trump says, preventive interest rate cuts are being demanded by many. Yes, everyone wants that. Every Bitcoin wants that. Interest rate cuts and lower rates mean Bitcoin to the moon. Since energy costs have dropped significantly, food prices, including Biden's egg fiasco, are noticeably lower, and most other things are declining. There is practically no inflation. Since these costs are trending down so sharply, just as I said before, there can be almost no inflation, but there might be an economic slowdown. If Mr. Too late, a big loser, so a big loser, the interest rates, does not lower them now. And he just says, to lower them immediately now. Europe has already lowered them 7 times. Powell was always too late. except during the election period when he lowered the rates to help Sleepy Joe and Peter Kamela get elected. So, yes, quite a steep thesis. Here at the end, suggesting that Jerome Powell is practically doing insider trading with the Democrats. We also know that Jerome Powell apparently meets for breakfast every week with Scott Bessent. So really crazy what's going on here. It's just exciting to observe all the macro stories right now. As Bitcoin, you can just watch it all very calmly, knowing that no matter how this turns out, Bitcoin will very likely benefit from it. And it's just very, very crazy that you don't have to worry now. Okay, maybe the company has smaller margins because tariffs might simply reduce the margins. Or is something here being mixed up because maybe China isn't pumping as much capital into the US stock market anymore? And then maybe the stock market I'm invested in, or something like that goes down. No, if you have Bitcoin, if you have gold, and so on, then you can watch this very calmly. And it's a huge spectacle that's happening right now. And yes, Bitcoin is very, very likely to be the big winner here. You can't make this stuff up. The S&P 500 has lost $750 billion in market capitalization since Trump, this morning, started calling the Fed Chairman Powell Mr. Too late. So now the exact opposite has happened. It has happened several times now that the exact opposite of what Donald Trump actually wanted to achieve has occurred. He wanted to bring down long-term interest rates. Now long-term interest rates are going up. He might want to boost the stock market, but now the stock market is going down. That means things aren't really going the way Donald Trump envisions. Maybe Donald Trump wants even more chaos to bring into the world so that Jerome Powell is forced to act. I don't know. I'm always torn back and forth. No idea. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you have good text on this. Even more extreme is the fact that, if we take a look here, despite President Trump's demands for interest rate cuts, according to Koloski, a betting market tool where you can see various odds, there is now an 85% probability that there will be no interest rate cut in May. Fed Chairman Powell recently said he is in no hurry to cut interest rates. So, we can clearly see here that the probabilities of interest rate cuts are not that high. I mean, this is generally not so good for Bitcoin, but Bitcoin currently has the advantage that it could establish itself as a risk-off asset at the moment. And then Bitcoin could benefit even despite the poor market conditions, despite the uncertainty, despite the high interest rates, or at least no interest rate cuts. And that is, of course, a very, very good story here. We are now seeing for the first time that the fear and greed index is no longer completely in the fours, but is slowly moving towards neutral. Currently at 34 here, the fear and greed index. Quite interesting. Donald Trump also said here, somehow today, or said it yesterday, I don't know, the one who has the gold makes the rules. So, that was his speech here for Easter. It's quite interesting that one might see it differently. Not the one who has the gold makes the rules, but the one who has the Bitcoin will make the rules in the future. I believe it will really come down to that the one who in the future has the Bitcoin bags ready will make the rules. And the crazy thing is, just think about it, the current constellation. And now imagine, Jerome Powell actually decides, maybe in a few months, to lower the interest rates. Donald Trump, he might also decide, okay, to lower one thing or another, lower some tariffs. Maybe there will be some initial deals or something. I mean, sooner or later there will definitely be some kind of deals. That means, let's clear those two things. Then even more liquidity comes into the market, more security into the market. And then the bull run is really completely prepared. Then it can really take off here. And then I would say it will look very, very massive here, potentially skyrocketing for Bitcoin. That would at least be the bull scenario, that these two things loosen up, which are currently causing uncertainty. And Bitcoin is already benefiting as a risk-off asset. But as soon as the risk goes away and security returns, liquidity returns, it naturally benefits Bitcoin even more. So, incredibly intense. Write me in the comments below what you think about the current situation. With the code Bitcoin Hotel at 21 Bitcoin, if you want to buy Bitcoin, you can get up to 20% off the fees when purchasing Bitcoin. Definitely check it out. Guys, see you. Peace out.